Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. Before we get started, we just wanted to go over a couple of quick housekeeping items. First, all attendees will be on mute throughout the presentation as this webinar is being recorded and will be available on demand later. And two, if you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. We will try and answer as many questions as we can at the end of the webinar. And now it's my pleasure to introduce today's presenters, KJ and Marty Deacon-Phillips, and without further ado, I'll hand it off.
Thanks, Patricia. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar. In the next few minutes, we will learn how to automate detection and response to attacks on your enterprise and prevent data leakage. So who is Fidelis? Fidelis has been in the cybersecurity space since 2002 and has a long and impressive track record of helping enterprises protect their data. We started off with we have a long and deep history with network breach detection and data loss prevention, and we've added endpoint detection response and deception capabilities to enhance and round out our security offering. Fidelis solutions are enterprise ready and are trusted by some of the world's largest organizations and even the government organizations. Our solutions provide a unique, patented, and contextual perspective with full visibility across your networks, endpoints, and the cloud in one platform. So, what is the challenge that is facing security operations today? As you know, in spite of all the security investments and all the products currently available in the market, breaches still happen. Data still gets stolen every single day. Why is that? It's probably because security operations today are more boundary focused, and they lack the visibility and context to understand what is going on inside the network. Security teams have been long conditioned to basically focus on log data, and they have quickly realized that this data can be very, very noisy. Teams are often understaffed and overwhelmed, and they have way too many tools to manage, which in turn leads to way too many alerts and too many false positives. And at the end of the day, a lot of manual effort is required to weed through the mountain of this information and come to a reliable conclusion. And this doesn't help anyone. And how serious is this problem? We recently conducted a survey that looked at security operations trends and challenges, and we found out that 83% of the companies surveyed can't even handle or triage half of their security alerts that they get each day. 62% of these companies cannot even triage a quarter of these alerts. That's a massive problem. And what happens to the poor security analysts? We found out that a SOC analyst can only handle, on an average, about 7 to 8 investigations per day. That is a massive loss of their productivity and a waste of their time. These alerts that aren't triaged and investigations that are not completed can lead to bad guys basically going unnoticed while they steal and exfiltrate your valuable data. This is not a good situation. And as you know, your information, your sensitive data is basically everywhere. Data is no longer bound within your company's perimeters or your walls. Our data is basically spread across multiple things. It's spread across SaaS apps, whether they are consumer-facing or business-facing, data centers, employee laptops, employee devices, and even the public cloud. Trying to protect this information that is so spread out over all these various locations is no easy task. So, how do traditional security operations work? Traditional security operations are basically very complex. They have siloed visibility across networks, endpoints, and even the cloud, if they do have cloud support. They have way too many tools for understaffed and overwhelmed teams to manage. And this is a problem that we are seeing more and more in multiple organizations. You have way too many tools to manage, tools that don't talk to each other, tools that are very complex to manage, and tools that basically give opposing information at times. And at the end of the day, security teams or security analysts have been conditioned to focus on SIMs because SIMs aggregate all this log information, but this information can provide or cause more, create more noise rather than creating clarity and providing that sharpness of information that you need. And at the end of the day, you have multiple opposing solutions. You have multiple solutions that people have to manage, the complex solutions. All of this is basically slowing down your ability to respond. It could basically take days to often even triage a single alert. Now, everyone would like to move to an ideal setup, and ideally, we would have a silver bullet for all your security problems, handle everything in one go. But what would an ideal setup typically look like? You could have a unified security stack that will basically give you a contextual, comprehensive perspective across your entire environment. And by that, I mean your network, your endpoint, and even the cloud if you have any cloud applications. Your analysts can quickly and effectively detect and respond to threats that are coming inside your network. Could be a human, it could be malware, and this activity can happen at every single stage of the attack lifecycle, and at the same time prevent any data, sensitive information that might be leaving or exfiltrating your network. So how do you actually get to the ideal security operations? Getting there is no easy task. As we've just seen, it can be very complicated to try and resolve all your problems of detecting breaches and preventing data exfiltration. But the best way to actually do that is probably to incorporate visibility and intelligence into your security solutions that can basically supercharge your security operations and make your teams more effective and more efficient. So now you might ask, are there any solutions today that might do that? As a matter of fact, because you're attending our webinar, I would like to say yes. Fidelis Elevate is one such solution. We provide your team with a unified security stack that delivers contextual perspective across your environment. With this context, you can quickly and effectively detect breaches and prevent data exfiltration across all stages of the attack lifecycle. Fidelis Elevate basically consists of 3 modules or 3 products: Fidelis Network, Fidelis Endpoint, and Fidelis Deception. All of these 3 have been created and provide features in the areas of visibility, detection, and response with a strong automation capability that helps your teams become more effective and efficient to prevent breaches and prevent data loss. So this picture might seem very familiar to you. This is how traditional security operations will work. A high priority alert comes into your network or comes to your security operations teams. Your security analysts scramble to find out, say, if an endpoint was affected. The best they will do is, if they don't have access to that endpoint, they will create a ticket with IT and have IT get that information back to them. The problem is IT is already overwhelmed. They may get back to you within a few hours, or it could be days. And there's no guarantee that this information is necessarily information that you need. So you might spend more cycles going back and forth to get the necessary information in order to make the right decision. Now, you have basically spent hours, or in the worst case scenario, days trying to triage an alert that came from a single endpoint. Now imagine this to the magnitude of a much larger company where you have thousands and tens of thousands of endpoints. You can quickly see how the problem can escalate. So what would happen if you had Fidelis Elevate? Now, Fidelis basically automates this process so that instead of hours or days, you can go from alert to resolution in a matter of minutes. When we actually deliver an alert, it's not just a potential problem. By the time we're actually giving you that information, we've already validated it, we've already correlated all the information that you need, and we are presenting it to you in a manner that you can actually find digestible, and you can actually make a decision based on the information that you're seeing in front of your screen. So you're literally starting with the information that would have taken you hours or days to assemble without Fidelis. This whole back and forth IT goes away, and in turn makes your teams more effective and more efficient. And lastly, I mean, in addition to just, we don't just monitor the infiltration and exfiltration. Monitoring an attacker's movements or a malware's movements within your network is also key. This is a new capability that we've added with our Fidelis Deception solution. So with this, you can also monitor malicious activity within your network and detect direct threats to decoy assets that look and feel very real. This basically, what it's going to do is going to significantly reduce your dwell time with early post-breach detection and fast response. And in essence, attackers are gaining access to fake information that looks really real, so that even if they are trying to exfiltrate that information is fake, and you can actually catch them in the act. Now, before we jump to Marty, who will show the demo, I just wanted to kind of set the stage of how this demo works. The upcoming demo will basically highlight how you can use all our solutions in the Fidelis Elevate platform to monitor threats and prevent exfiltration. The demo will basically start in our deception product and will show how an attacker interacts with fake assets to reveal their position and the location of the compromised endpoint. You can then see that we will be able to gather additional information about the alerts that were generated from this affected endpoint, and then we can further dive deeper into all the activity using our network and endpoint products. I'm going to turn it over to Marty right now. Just give me one quick second. Over to you, Marty.
Welcome, everybody, and thanks for attending our webinar today. So before I get started showing you the actual product, I wanted to take a quick minute and talk about the architecture. Our architecture actually can be deployed, the management to our solution can either be deployed as an on-premise solution, or we do have a cloud offering. So we can move that management infrastructure out, especially to the enterprises that have sites that are distributed out, through many geographical locations. They can all communicate to a central point. In addition to the management functions that we could deploy in the cloud, and again, we could deploy on-prem, the Fidelis solution comprises of sensors that would be positioned in your network to monitor traffic, as well as agents that are installed on the host. We support many operating systems, including Windows, Linux, and Mac. The newest solution KJ mentioned is our deception. And our deception is really designed to sit inside the network, monitor internal activity, and then, of course, be able to tie into our other components to allow you, quick and easy investigation of activity. So with that said, I'm going to pivot over to our management console, and I'm going to start with our deception product, our deception console. And as we move into the deception console, of course, I have infected assets, so I will probably start to drill down on that. As soon as I drill down on that, I'm going to walk through some of these, but this particular asset has been giving me some trouble lately, so I'm going to focus in on that. And I believe a picture is worth 1,000 words. So once I actually drill down into the picture, I notice I have this asset. The green arrows represents legitimate network traffic. What's interesting in here is these paw prints, the purple paw prints, represent something we refer to as mini traps, or as the industry refers to them as breadcrumbs. So this particular asset had some interesting traffic placed on it that either the user, the human, or possibly the logic that, maybe accompanied some sort of malicious programming has, triggered on our breadcrumbs, and then that has actually directed it over to the white icons all the way to the right of the screen, which is the actual decoys. And this is actually pretty much set up all automatically. So it's once, positioned on your site, there's just a little bit of configuration, and then we go about and learn about everything on your network, and it's quickly deployed. What's interesting is here is we do have this tied into our Elevate platform. And if I go ahead and I click on the Fidelis Elevated alerts over here towards the left side of the screen, I'm going to bring up the activity specific to that endpoint. And if you notice, I'm focused on this particular host IP that was interesting in our deception component. Now I've moved over to our K2 management console where I have consolidated alerts. And as I look at some of these alerts, I have some endpoint file collection, which is interesting. I also have some alerts that triggered on credit card data, as well as looks like I have some malware on the system. So let's start with the malware first. And before I go there, I want to kind of point something out. The Endpoint Activity Shield represents us automatically reaching out to the agent to determine if this activity is been detected on the agent and has it executed. So by the shield being red, we know that activity was detected on that endpoint. And as I click into the alert details of that particular malware event, and as I scroll down, I have a lot of good information here. It looks like I have a known piece of malware, so we have some information on that. Fidelis supports a full sandboxing detonation, so I have the sandbox report for the reverse engineers, so that information is all right at our fingertips. But I'm really interested in the endpoint information. So as I drill down into the endpoint information, I have validation. So I know that this file did reach that host and there was an execution. As I drill into the enrichment and I step through the activity that's on there, I'm going to come to a process summary where we had an executable, and that executable was a scenario where it was trying to escalate privileges. So this is concerning to me, and I want to respond to that. So the option we have within the Fidelis K2 Management Console is basically one click, and I could actually isolate that host. We can also do a whole host of other things. We can gather information on there. We can delete the file. We can collect the file, or we can run just about any script that you could probably imagine that you would want to do to a host in the event of a issue that we're investigating. So there's a tremendous amount of options there. So the other things that concerned me when I go back to the alert detail was I saw this credit card alert and also drugs and human names. So those are concerning to me. So as I pivot over into that alert detail, I noticed I have a rule that comes from Fidelis looking to identify PCI credit card data. And what's cool is I can, the rule set up to match on different types of information that could be present. As I scroll down into the forensic information, you'll notice we color-coded, highlighted the particular information that our rule is matching on. And this particular rule is looking for PCI data and, of course, credit card numbers. But as you examine the document, there could be Social Security numbers there as well. The great thing about this is we're presenting that information there. So it's relatively simple for the analyst to be able to identify that this is significant information and it allow them to start their remediation task. So one of the challenges we do have sometimes is we don't have the luxury of combining all these solutions together. So each system has to operate independently. And there's a lot of enterprises out there that don't have the luxury of installing an agent on every one of their hosts, but they do want to understand activity that's going on. So as I pivot over to another alert detail, I have another scenario where we've picked up some malware. We do have the sandbox report, but again, the sandbox report is what could happen. It doesn't necessarily know what did happen on that particular host. And of course, since we don't have the endpoint solution out there, we don't have any endpoint information. But I really want to understand what is happening on that particular host. Now, one of the great things that the Fidelis does is we collect all session metadata. So everything about what we see on the wire, we actually make a record of it, whether we alert on it or not. So what that allows me to do is to click on this Find Metadata button, and that'll pivot over into our metadata collector, and then allow us to do some further analysis on here. And for the sake of time, I've actually already clicked on a couple scenarios where I've isolated just the traffic to this particular client, and I'm looking at a certain period of time. And what I've done with all this information here is I'm trying to put together a picture on what potential activity is happening here. And as I mouse over to my graphical view, as I highlight or just really hover over each one of those lines, I'm able to pull up all the metadata that we store on every session we see. And there's a lot that can be digested there. But, you know, in this particular scenario, this is the classic, you know, somebody sends out a police report. You know, I don't know how many times, you know, your friends send you emails about, you know, the latest pop culture figure being arrested or something like that, and then everybody has a habit to want to read the latest and greatest, and they click on something, and that sets off a chain of events. Maybe it takes you to a website. But in this particular scenario, there was a file. It looked like a police report. It had an image in it. As we scroll over there, we actually detected some unknown protocol, and that's the really cool thing about Fidelis. We just don't limit ourselves to web traffic and mail traffic like other security products. We're focused on all ports, all protocols. If we don't understand the protocol, we still classify it as unknown, and we're able to identify objects embedded in that unknown protocol like JavaScript. So as I noticed here, I have some JavaScript. It does have a title, but the title is in some characters that I can't decipher. As I scroll through there seems to be a dialogue going on with this particular client. As I scroll down here, we have a scenario where we're actually going out and we're pulling down what appears to be an image, but within that image, it is actually an executable. As I step through this, I notice now I'm having some a more unknown protocol, but this is, you know, there's communications going with Indonesia. That may not be normal to my enterprise. As I scroll through here, then I have the scenario where we are posting activities, so posting objects out to the web. And if I look down at the decoding path down here in the bottom of my decoding path here, I'll notice I have a bunch of, looks like files that are zipped up, and of course, credit card and name. So if I notice there's some red dots here, I do have some related alerts. So I could actually pivot back over to alert detail to see if I can have a little bit better understanding what's going on. And as I do that, I have a bunch of alerts there. And if I scroll into any one of these alerts, if you notice over here to the right or to the left of my screen, I have the decoding path. So we will actually drill down in these files. It doesn't matter how many layers we have. We'll continue to decode it until we presented the binary. So here's a scenario where we have some files that are wrapped up several times. So, and all that information is available at the fingertips to the user. If I wanted to download those files, I could click the download button here. In this particular scenario, if I wanted to capture everything, I could click the export, I could create an evidence package, and then I can move that evidence package into my, you know, my remediation instructions we have that, you know, how people are going to deal with these problems as they're detected. That kind of wraps up the quick demo. So the other comment I was reminded of is the other scenario we have is we have the ability to, based on alerts and all that, and the activity that's out there, we're also bringing things together in conclusions. So we can tie together all the alerts that have taken place and this inclusion in the last 24 hours, and then we can drill into that. But again, we can drill into that and we can have all the conclusions where we have a grouping of all the alerts specific to a particular event and be able to highlight that. That kind of wraps up the demo. We'll be looking to see if there's any questions we can answer for folks.
All right, thank you, Marty and KJ, for that great presentation. Like Marty just mentioned, we have some time for questions right now. And just as a reminder, if you have a question, please type that into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. And going through the questions that are coming in right now, let's see. One of our first questions is, can software and sensors be virtualized if someone doesn't want to go with the box solution?
Yes, the sensors can either be deployed as a physical appliance or as a virtual appliance in a VMware ESX environment.
All right. And the next question that came in is, what do you use to discover malware or APTs? Is it signature-based or behavioral?
Both. We update signatures regularly with the connection back to Fidelis, or we can offer an air gap solution for those folks that need to isolate their security. And based on our malware detection engine, we're able to emulate not only objects that we find on the web traffic, but again, across any port or any protocol.
All right, and another question is, can the sensors be out of path or inline only?
We support both. We can monitor out of band, but we still offer prevention, and since we are based on deep session inspection or, analyzing conversations, not just packets, even out of band, we can send a reset to basically hit the end button on a conversation to reset the connection. In addition, we can run an inline up to 10 gigs aggregate traffic, and inline, not only do we reset the connection, but we also put up a block.
Right. So bring through another question. What's the speed capability?
Our sensors can be support up to 10 gig, and through load balancing, we can get to 40 gig, or even I have customers that are flirting with 100 gig these days.
Okay, and how do you stack up against OPSWAT, OPS, WAT?
Again, that technology is focused on using public infrastructure for malware analysis. Our solution has its own malware analysis on board, plus through our collector, we're able to validate with public services without reaching out to those public services and sharing information with them.
All right, we only have time for a couple more questions, so make sure to get yours in if you still have one. The one last one is, how is your technology different from other packet capture technologies?
So we're actually not a full packet capture technology. Probably the best way to look at our technology is, if you were to do a packet capture and you'd want to analyze that traffic, you would probably use a tool like Wireshark, or there's some other tools out there. What we're doing is we're actually analyzing that traffic in real time, and we're putting all the packets together that make up the particular conversation or data activity that's happening, and then we are decoding that as a conversation. And then once we've decoded that conversation, again, all ports, all protocols, then we can apply a policy engine to it to look for unusual activity or behavior. We can run all the objects that we detect through our malware detection stack, as well. We harvest all the metadata, and with the metadata and not the payload, we're able to set up scenarios where we can look at events in frequency and events in sequence. And one of the other key components is every object that we see on the wire, we actually make a metadata or a MD5 hash or a SHA-256 hash of every one of those objects. And when new threat intel is available, we actually, and whether it's through Fidelis or it's actually, say, through a third party, we actually apply all those hashes to the historical data. So again, a lot of technology out there, they get current intel, but it's from the, it's from the time that intel is loaded moving forward. There's no real easy way to look back. We automatically look back as part of our technology using the component in our network solution called Collector.
We got one more question basically asking, is your solution secure, because they noticed that the SSL certificate was missing?
So on my demo system, since I tear it up and build it quite a bit, we use a self-signed certificate, of course, out of the box, but in a large enterprise where we would be installing it, you would actually use, you would create a signing certificate and send it off to your root CA or contact through one of the various vendors out there that provide certificates, and then you would install the certificate on the system. Again, with my my demo system, since it's a virtualized, and again, we do bring it up, tear it down, it's cost prohibitive to keep changing the certificate on it.
One last comment that came in was people were slightly confused about your 100 gig comment, and speed was 10 gig.
Right.
I think they misunderstood the 10 and 100 gig. Could you clarify that?
Yeah, that would be using load balancing to front end multiple sensors to get to that 100 gig.
All right. Doesn't look like we have any more questions, so that's all that we'll have for today. Thank you again to Marty and KJ for a great presentation, and thank you to everybody who joined us today. Have a great rest of your day.